The early morning mist still hung heavy on the dense canopy of Virunga National Park. Ranger Alara Thompson, 10 years into her patrol, was accustomed to the sounds of dawn, the chorus of birds, the rustle of leaves, or the occasional distant roar. But this morning, the day began with an entirely different sound, one that broke all rules, a rapid, desperate pounding on the wooden stoop outside her outpost. This was no wind or wildlife. It was a fervent plea. Alara rushed to open the heavy wooden door, her hot coffee slipping from her grasp, and her heart stalled. Standing on the porch was a baby gorilla, small, trembling, and utterly terrified. But what stunned her was his snow-white coat. This was Snow, the rarest albino individual Virunga had ever known. His pale pink eyes were wide, glittering with pure panic. Without a snarl or a flight of fear, the little gorilla immediately grasped Alara's hand, a small, yet impossibly strong grip, and began pulling her forward. His entire tiny body shivered, but the intent was clear. He was dragging a human into the dangerous depths of the forest. Why? What could compel this fragile, isolated creature to place absolute faith in a stranger? This was where their story began, a tale of connection forged in crisis, where the courage of a tiny life transcended all the laws of the jungle. The next 2 minutes were a blend of pure instinct and utter surrender. Alara knew she was breaking every rule by following a primate, but the desperation etched on Snow's unique face was a language she couldn't ignore. She had to leave her radio, leave her cover, and focus only on that small handhold. Snow's pure white fur contrasted sharply with the emerald green of the Virunga jungle, creating a stark visual that reminded her of his fragility and the extraordinary risk he was taking. They crashed through thick undergrowth. Alara was not leading. She was being led. Snow's pace was urgent, relentless. He constantly looked back, his pale eyes pleading, ensuring she was steadfastly following. This small, vulnerable creature was utterly dependent on her mercy and strength. In that moment, Alara felt she was no longer a ranger, but an anchor for the baby's fear. The first major challenge was not physical, but an ultimate test of survival instinct. A low, territorial growl shook the ground. They had stumbled upon Keto, the family's dominant silverback and Snow's father, on patrol nearby. Keto was a massive block of muscle, the embodiment of authority and protective instinct. Alara instantly froze, her hand hovering over her sidearm. She should have stayed put or waited for backup. Keto's massive body pivoted, his black eyes locking onto the human intruder. The tension was thick, the air sucked dry. The moment just before the storm hits. But Snow shattered the standoff. He completely ignored his father, ignored the terrifying rumble that would send any other creature scattering, and simply pulled harder on Alara's trousers, urging her past Keto. In that tiny moment, Alara realized the profound meaning in Snow's actions. He wasn't just seeking help. He was establishing a bridge of trust between his father and his potential savior. He chose me over his king. Alara lowered her shoulder, avoiding direct eye contact as a sign of respect and submission, and put down her machete. She chose to trust Snow's guidance over the fear she had been taught for years. She realized this was not a rescue, but a partnership. Keto watched them, his initial fury replaced by a deep confusion and anxiety at his son's urgency. They continued on, the bond between the woman and the albino gorilla strengthening with every labored breath. The urgent trek finally ended by a cluster of jagged granite rocks, a geological scar left by a recent major storm. Snow stopped pulling abruptly. His gentle tugging turned into a painful sob, and he buried his face in the damp earth. Alara followed his gaze and witnessed the tragedy. Lumi, the mother gorilla, lay slumped beneath a horrific obstacle. A colossal ancient tree limb, the size of a truck tire, loosened by the heavy rain and crashed down, pinning her torso and arm against a boulder. Lumi was a magnificent creature, full of strength, but now utterly helpless. Her breathing was shallow and frantic, her eyes already glazed over with shock and pain. and that look was fading. They locked onto Alara's, and the look held no aggression, but a pure, silent plea. Alara immediately assessed the situation. The limb was too large, too heavy for one person to lift. It required a winch, a team, and hours, time Lumi did not have. Panic began to rise in Alara, but the unwavering presence of Snow beside her was a steady anchor. He climbed onto his mother's back, gently patting her head and whimpering, his whole body shaking with distress. Suddenly, a massive dark shadow fell over them. Keto had caught up, silently emerging through the dense foliage. His arrival carried no threat, but the most agonizing confirmation of the tragedy. He let out a low, mournful groan, a sound of supreme distress and impotence. He paced frantically, his massive hands reaching out but unable to gain purchase on the slippery wood that imprisoned his mate. In this tight space, two completely different beings, a human woman and a giant gorilla, were bound by a common fear, the loss of a mate and a parent. Alara made the ultimate, most reckless decision of her life as a ranger. She looked directly into Keto's wild, desperate eyes. She used a small, steady voice and gentle hand gestures, pointing at the large log, then to Keto's bulging, muscular arm, and then back to the log. She pushed on the log herself to show the futility of her own strength. She was communicating the truth. I am here to help, but I need your strength. We fight for her together. Keto watched, his primal rage subdued by the complexity of love and impending loss. The final barrier dissolved. They were now just two entities, a human and a primate, fighting for one family. The moment of truth hung heavy in the humid air. Alara quickly located a broken branch, a thick piece of wood, but far too small to leverage against the enormous weight. She wedged it into a crevice and threw her entire body weight onto it, grunting with effort. The massive log budged only a few millimeters, and the leverage branch cracked ominously. Failure was certain on her own. And then, the miracle. A massive, scar-black hand, the size of a dinner plate, slowly settled down and firmly gripped the other end of the lever. Keto had accepted the partnership. He positioned his body, wrapping his other arm around a stable root for leverage, channeling his unbelievable, primal strength toward the shared goal. Alara felt the ground shake beneath her feet as Keto's chest expanded. "All right, big guy," Alara whispered, her voice shaking with awe and terror. "My signal. Push. Push with me." They exerted their strength. Keto's sound was not a roar of anger, but a concentrated shriek of pure desperation and effort. The combined strength of human intellect and primate brawn was phenomenal. The wood groaned, the rocks ground beneath the earth, and with a sickening shriek, the massive log shifted, a precious 2 centimeters. Alara quickly adjusted the fulcrum. Snow, seeing the movement, scrambled to his mother's side, nudging her face as if urging her to hold on. Again, they pushed, breaths synchronized, hearts beating to the same frantic rhythm. The scent of human sweat and gorilla musk mingled in the air. The log shifted a few more crucial centimeters. Alara's muscles were screaming. Keto's shoulders looked like twin rock formations under the strain. The pressure was immense, but the thought of Lumi fading pushed them further. "One more time, Keto. Last one," Alara yelled, her voice raw. They coiled, one final, desperate surge of shared will. This time, the rock and the log parted with a great thud. With a final, weak groan, Lumi was free. She slumped onto the damp earth, immediately clutching her injured torso. Snow scrambled onto her back, chirping with boundless relief. Alara stumbled backward, completely spent, collapsing onto the forest floor. She stared, breathless, at the magnificent silverback still holding the life-saving lever, their hearts beating in tandem. The species barrier was gone. Only shared victory remained. The chaos of the rescue subsided, replaced by a profound silence. Alara and Keto were side by side, both exhausted, both survivors. Keto looked down at his mate, who was slowly recovering, and then slowly turned his head and looked directly at Alara. His deep black eyes held hers for a long, steady moment. There was no aggression, no dominance display, only an unmistakable expression of profound acknowledgement and gratitude. Then, Keto performed the unthinkable. He slowly extended one of his massive, scarred fingers, the size of a dinner roll, and gently touched Alera's arm. It was the softest touch possible, a nonverbal, undeniable thank you that resonated louder than any human words. Alera did not flinch. She accepted this deepest form of respect. She was no longer an outsider. She had been welcomed into a sacred family moment. Lumi, the mother, slowly sat up, weak but alive. She saw Snow, her unique albino child, clinging to her. She pulled him close, wrapping a massive arm around him. The sight was intensely emotionally satisfying. A family reunited, saved by a partnership built on trust that transcended both species and color. Alera realized the profound solution this moment offered. Conservation is built not on control, but on connection. This incredible story, born from the fierce love of a family in Virunga, shows us that the differences we see, white fur versus human skin, ape versus human, are meaningless in the face of a common purpose. Snow, the albino gorilla, might be seen as an outcast by some, but to his parents, he was everything. He had the courage to trust a stranger. Keto, the mighty silverback, chose collaboration over confrontation, choosing faith in a compassionate hand over the rage in his heart. This was more than a rescue. It was proof that connection is the common language of survival. If a mother's love can teach a baby gorilla to trust a human, what barriers can we break down? If this story gave you faith in connection, hit the like button on this video. And if you believe in the vital work of rangers like Alera, who risk everything every day for these families in Virunga, please subscribe to support the Virunga National Park Fund. Every subscription is a sign of trust that helps protect this fragile, beautiful world. What moment in your own life made you realize that the strongest connections are often the most unexpected? Share your story in the comments below.